Good morning, comic fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your ever Shorty. We're going to be reviewing Endeavour today, but before we get too much into the actual comic book, it's worth talking about Distillery. And this is not my usual, gosh darn it, those comic books are just annoyingly a little bit too big. It's actually down to distribution and shipping and how unreliable Distillery are. Now, this isn't like a criticism of any individual comic book or individual creators. It's just, no matter what I tell you about Distillery book, no matter how much I'm going to rave about any particular one, or say something which might be think I'm going to go and check that out, I have to include in the review just the general possibility that you're going to be disappointed by how long it takes for the rest of the story to come out. And it's not a universal problem, but it is noticeable more Distillery than other companies. I know a lot of other companies have had problems with distribution, with manufacturing, with shipping. There's been tariff issues for the US and problems with Canadian wood supply. But unlike most companies, Distillery still seem to be struggling quite a lot. And even now, yes, other companies do. DC, I mean, they're 2 issues into a brand new Batman series, and the old Batman series is still 2 issues away from finishing. So it's not like it's a pure Distillery thing, but they are one of the worst people for it at the moment. And you want to know how bad? Through Red Windows has been on their solicitation repeatedly listed again, still never turned up. I picked up issue 1 of One for Sorrow at Thought Bubble Comic Convention last year. Issue 2 still isn't out yet, and I'm going to go back to Thought Bubble in like a few weeks or like a month or something like that. So if you are going to pick anything up from them, just be prepared for this kind of disappointment. And if you are working for Distillery and you're watching this for some reason, I really hope you can get this sorted out. I don't need to think this is just like lazy criticism or trying to convince people not to buy your stuff. I have got quite a lot of Distillery books, and we do want to get more in. But compared to when it first started, where we were ordering a lot and selling a lot, it's now become this thing where we don't get that much. I mean, one of my customers, particularly handsome young man, asked me, do a lot of people get Distillery? And it was like, well, there's like one guy who loves it, he gets a lot of stuff, but other than that, it's more like a very small little handful. Every once in a while, somebody will be like, well, actually, I really like Ram V, so I'd like to get through Red Windows. But they're not doing it for the Distillery of it all, and it feels like a bit of a shame, because when the company launched, they had such promise, and I was really looking forward to a lot of what they did. In this particular case, with Endeavour, I feel like it's just not a comic book that's aimed at me. And it's not because of the fact that it involves naval ships and such things. I quite like this, and the comic book sets itself up quite nicely with these idea of what it was like for the original Endeavour, not just for the fact that it was this wonderful beacon of exploration, but also for the terrible things that happened in terms of colonization to the places it ended up. And it then comes to a more contemporary thing, and here's where I found myself losing interest a little bit, because it's clear that the focus of the story is going to be the children, and that's just a thing where I'm very little time for it. I just don't like children, and it's not that I don't have time for any stories involving them. I quite like some Stephen King books. I mean, Stand By Me is one of my favourite movie adaptations of stuff. I really like it, but for a guy my age, approaching 50, to not like The Goonies makes me quite unpopular, but gosh darn it, those kids are annoying. Even the older ones should calm the shit down. Not just that, but this comic book leads itself towards being an almost Lord of the Flies-esque thing where all that's left is children finding a way to survive. And if you read Lord of the Flies and don't get the class differences in terms of these are people who were raised in a certain way, who had expectations that life would treat them in a certain way, and when it didn't go well, they went feral quickly. Does feel like Stephanie Phillips has set it up that these are people of that certain kind of class. Not all of them, and not all of them might be terrible people, but we are still dealing with privilege taken away, and I think that is going to be an interesting thing to look at, but it doesn't really interest me, which is a shame, because the writing is actually pretty good. I quite enjoy the fact that we get a lot of time building up on characterization, even for people who might not be around for the rest of the story. I'm fairly sure with the effort put into them, they might appear in flashbacks or people remembering various things. But I like a lot of what I saw in this first one. I like how well it was paced. The fact that we have the big defining moment that sets up the rest of the story happening quite late on in the first issue, where not much time is spent on it. I feel like that is a really good idea. Spend more time on character and let that inform story, rather than doing far too much exposition on building up what happens for the story. I will also say it's a good-looking book. Mark Lamming, I think his name is? Lamming? Yeah. He's a good artist. I feel like maybe he doesn't quite do as much with the oversized format of Distillery than other artists have done, but that's not a big criticism. Like, I think there's only a handful of artists that really fill every single inch of a page with gorgeous art in this kind of way, but it still looks fantastic. I like some of his inventive layouts, and his individual character design is brilliant. To say these are all just for the pretty much as normal people, there is still time spent to make them all feel comfortable in their own skin and unique and individual in their own ways. I think there's a lot of stuff going for it, but honestly, didn't work for me in terms of wanting to carry on reading it, which is a bit of a shame. That's it for me today, though. Until I see you all again, look after yourself, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!